Hey guys, this is Rick coming at you with Weed to No Basis, the podcast for all things cannabis business related. Are you an entrepreneur? Have something you wanted to create, something you wanted to bring to life in the cannabis industry? Maybe you've always wanted to partake in one of the biggest industries in modern day history. This is the podcast to listen to.
Okay, so we're recording, we're live, and for those of you out there, this is a quick intro, so you know who I am. And we're here in my home office. You've seen my home office before, and the whiteboard is not staged. Those are actually ideas and stuff. I should probably hide it so nobody gets the trade secrets, but seriously. So we're here, and we're with Jason Mansfield. He's the director, the biz dev guy, director of business development, otherwise known as the biz dev guy for Merchant X. And specifically, so we're doing this series, Transcending the Turbulence, because as we record this, and I'm going to date this, this is May of 2019, CBD in the hemp industry, especially for e-commerce, is going through a turbulent time. And while there's a lot of speculation as to why it's happening or who's rocking the boat, the fact is our goal here at Weed to No Basis is to cater to you, the startup cannabis entrepreneur or the person who's thinking about it, and to really calm those waters as much as we possibly can with knowledge, experience, and bringing on SMEs, subject matter experts. And so we're here today with Jason, and I got it, full disclosure, I've known Jason for a bit now, and he's actually, so Jason, just, you're where today? You're talking to us from where?
Portland, Maine.
Nice. And so is that right? You're the director of business development for Merchant X, right?
That's me.
So give us kind of like, not necessarily elevator pitch, maybe like a 3-4 elevator pitch of what Merchant X does and why you do it.
Well, we provide merchant services for any and every industry out there. So anywhere from retail, low risk accounts, through medium and up to the high risk and even ultra high risk. You know, we try to find a solution for every business type, regardless. And we try to do that all while providing the same service and expertise that you'd expect if you were in a low risk industry. So we try to make sure that pricing is fair, service is exceptional. And in short, yeah, we're not shy of the harder to place or non-traditional businesses, which CBD is definitely a part of. We, for the longest time, thought that and saw that CBD was trending towards medium and low risk. But then obviously with a lot of the nosedive that the payment processing side has taken lately, we're seeing that trend upwards again to high risk and even ultra high risk in terms of what's available for solutions and what those solutions cost.
Gotcha. So break it down for the startup cannabis entrepreneur, because sometimes when we say stuff like every business type and ultra high risk, low risk, and a lot of times the listener here is they're either very curious and they need to know how to navigate. They're dipping their toes in the water right now, and generally speaking, and we'll touch on this, they're thinking of PayPal, the Venmos, the Stripes. So when we're talking about ultra high risk, low risk, put that in terms that the everyday, and those are my words, the everyday startup CBD entrepreneur is, what does that mean to them?
Sure, yeah, and this is information that any business owner can benefit from. So in general, there's a distinction between risk categories when it comes to merchant payment processing. And I guess to go a step further backwards, merchant services refers specifically to the acceptance of a credit or debit card as a form of payment for products and services. So to break down low risk, that would be industries that are card present. So any retail industry, you know, like a restaurant or a hair salon or a nail salon or the thrift store down the street, anything where the card is physically present and being inserted into a terminal, that's a lower risk transaction because the card is physically present. Whereas, you know, and therefore the transaction is more guaranteed as legitimate. Obviously, fraud still happens, and in fact, that's why the EMV chips are now so popular, is because so much card-present fraud was possible. But to break it down further, so a medium or higher risk business could be deemed medium or high risk for a number of reasons. It could be on the product type itself. So in this example, obviously hemp and CBD-based products are high risk just because of the product. But then, sometimes it's the billing model that necessitates something being high risk. So like continuity models where there's a subscription involved, that can be high risk depending on how the purchaser opts into that recurring continuity program. If they knowingly opt into it, that's opt-in continuity. If they sign up for a free trial and then didn't realize that behind that free trial there's a consistent monthly rebill, that's a negative option continuity subscription, and that's extremely high risk because a lot of people abuse that transaction environment. So in general, the real difference between low risk and high risk, and I could go on for days and days, but essentially it's either the billing model or the product type, obviously a combination of those two. And then I guess another important mention is the chargebacks that could post from those transactions. The more exposure there are in terms of chargebacks, the higher risk the category is. And typically, it just takes a little bit of time for merchant services acquiring bank to determine what that industry might be. So what is medium risk now could eventually end up being high risk, just depending on how many chargebacks they see post across the entire space. So I hope that helps. That might actually open up more questions than it answered. But in general, I'd say, yeah, that's the difference between low and medium and high risk is all that.
That's actually very good, and it's every time I've spoken to you, I learned something more because at its basis, generally speaking, somebody might want to jump into the business or the industry, CBD hemp e-commerce specifically, because it seems so easy, and honestly, it's not hard to launch an e-commerce business. What the challenges are with merchant processing and with the website host. So to be clear, to make the distinction, you're not talking about stuff like Shopify or WooCommerce. You're talking about the actual, I think you mentioned it, the ability to accept a credit card for services. So it's the actual transaction that your business helps entrepreneurs navigate and tackle, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the platform itself could be anything. It could be Shopify, it could be 3D Cart, could be WooCommerce, Magento, any number of e-commerce platforms that allow a business to build a website. And some of them have bundled in payments. So Shopify has Shopify Payments, which is a Stripe product. And with that comes, an acceptable use policy that doesn't really tolerate all industries. And so some people might sign up for Shopify Payments, not realizing that, hey, the product you're selling is actually high risk, quote unquote. So yeah.
Interesting. And I'm taking notes as we're talking too. And this is like I tell people on a week-to-no basis, this is like really live. Like for instance, before we got on, when you logged into Zoom, it was kind of funny. So we do a little mic check and a visual check, and it looked like you were part of the Matrix, just the way your screen was. That was a little, so we didn't record that, but it was actually kind of funny. But I just wanted to make those distinctions. And one of the beauties of this program is that we're living in this industry as well. We're not just running a media show, and you're not just some guy at a company in Maine. We have a vested interest to see people succeed. So like as an example, and a lot of people don't know this, is, whoops, hold on. I don't want my thing to, looks like it was going to start rebooting my computer. That would be a bad time right now. No, but so getting shut down, it happened. One of the companies I had co-founded several years ago, CBD Commerce. I honestly, just to be totally transparent, is when we first launched, me personally, I didn't grasp the nuances of high risk, low risk, medium risk, hemp. I just thought I'm going to be able to sell this product online and really help people until the day we got shut down. And it was a shock. We literally got an email from, I think it was PayPal, and this is not casting blame on PayPal. This is something that the entrepreneur should know. Like we should know these things. And it was on Cyber Monday, like 2 days after Black Friday in 2017. And we got an email, and we basically had about 60 minutes, like an hour, before our account the plug was pulled. And we literally had an hour, and our account was shut down. We were dead in the water. And that was a big slap in the face, Jason. So when it comes to things like the PayPals, and again, I'm not talking bad about them because I still use PayPal for everyday transactions. I still use Stripe and stuff like that. But for the ones, for the startups, for the ones who are thinking, let me slide in, let me jump into one of these rather known merchant processing platforms. What do you say? Like, with love and respect, what would you say to them?
If they want to start their business using a Stripe solution or a PayPal solution, I mean, I wouldn't blame them. A lot of people are doing it, and I feel like those platforms might do everybody a service by just explaining, hey, looks like you run a high-risk business. Just so you know, by the way, if you build your website on this platform, you can't use our payment service. But for people who are thinking about getting in, using like a Stripe or a PayPal, just understand the risks in that they are quick to approve. They will approve you, literally within 15 seconds, and you can start taking payments right then and there. But you're building your house on a shaky foundation. And as soon as they realize that you're processing CBD or hemp or any other, higher risk industry, they will pull the rug out from underneath you, and they'll shut your account down. And sometimes that includes holding all the funds that you've processed through that account until they feel comfortable remitting that money to you. So I wouldn't blame people for doing it, especially since I feel like there's a lack of education out there in terms of the payment processing side and why a product is restricted. But if you are in that position, obviously you need to find yourself a merchant service provider that can handle the products you're offering. And specifically to this chat, hemp and CBD, there's very few options. So it's just going to be important to make sure that you kind of hedge your bets and do your homework and make sure that the solution that you're providing or signing up with rather is above board and is open to processing payments for that specific product type. Otherwise, you might get everything set up, have your grand opening online sale, and then a day later, all that marketing drive you did is for nothing because you can't take payments anymore and you're scrambling to get a solution. So that's what I would say if someone is looking at PayPal or Square or Stripe or one of these kind of aggregator style solutions where it's quick to approve. Just do your homework, make sure that you realize the risk you're taking. And obviously, if you have the time, look into other options outside of just what they provide as a built-in payment solution.
Nice. That's one of the things we've mentioned this in some of our earlier episodes is, generally speaking, entrepreneurs, we have this, and I say we because I'm also an entrepreneur. I've been unemployed and unemployable for about 20 years. So I've worked for myself for quite a while. So if anybody don't get your shorts in a wad, but generally speaking, they say jump and then build your wings. And on some levels, that's kind of cool and fun. But when it comes to transacting, actually the way you put food on your table, receiving payment, I would not tell you to jump and build the wings on the way down. To what Jason said is hedge your bets and do your homework. And it's an absolute necessity, especially because especially if you're e-commerce specific, this is how you receive your money. I'm going to take a quick, we were recently at a conference. You and I were there together. It was a conference in Indianapolis, and it was when was it? July or August? Not too long ago.
I forget. It was February?
It was pretty recent. It was like,
I think it was March. It was March.
Yeah, it was just not too long ago. Now, and here's why this show today matters, and why I wanted to really have you on to kind of share your expertise and of course to be fully transparent is to let people know that Merchant X is there for them. But we were there at this conference, and it was a pretty well attended conference in Indianapolis, Indiana. So it was in the Midwest, and there's a hemp CBD boom like there is everywhere. And at this conference, there was a lot of scuttlebutt about a company pulling out of CBD merchant processing. And Jason, I think we lost you. That's okay, as long as we can hear you. But
I'm back.
Yeah, it's like magic. And It's like, hold on, my phone's ringing now. But anyway, we were at this conference and there was a lot of hubbub and chatter about how a big processor was shutting their doors and closing down. And supposedly it was like a known one. And I think it came to fruition maybe about a week later when everybody went back home that, and again, I'm not casting stones, to be clear, but it's literally a turbulent time. But I think it was Elevon, which was a major processor. They pulled out or they stopped or something like that. So knowing that, it's do your homework, hedge your bets as far as PayPal and Stripe. And then on the flip side, the other end of the spectrum is known processors still could pull chocks, could pull the plug. What do we do? How do we think or process through that? And then I'm curious to know, like, again, because there's all kinds of speculation, what's going on?
Well, it's always important to make sure you have your plan B. And obviously it's an additional expense if you want to have some sort of backup plan. But, and I always recommend that you have your go-to strategy lined up, so that you don't have to worry about scrambling for a payment solution. And so, yeah, when Elevon announced that they were going to cancel their program, they gave everybody a window of time to find a new solution. And we thought there were going to be some other solutions available, but those also kind of dried up and went away. So there's kind of just a general, a massively underserved portion of the CBD niche that is all kind of scrambling to find a merchant payment solution. So it's on the one hand, you want to try to, obviously find a solution that works, but you have to also realize that, with all industries, but I think especially CBD and hemp, it's volatile. There's always an opportunity or a chance rather that any sponsor bank could cancel their program, just like we saw with Elevon. So even when new solutions come around, there's no guarantee, and it's gonna be hard to predict when and but I'd say the cautious entrepreneur should always have your go-to solution and use that as much as you can. But then, when you have the time and the resources, look into other options and make sure you're always aware of what's the latest and greatest and available. And maybe have a second account looming somewhere in the background as a backup, so that when and if unfortunate credit policies change, you won't be kind of just left trying to find a solution. So I guess that's what I'd say for any entrepreneur who's, just kind of interested in how to build some, remove points of failure. Make sure that you can't predict everything, but try to have, stay on top of those solutions as best you can. And obviously your job is to run your business and not always fiddle fart around with your payment processing. But the people who did that and kind of built redundancy into their payment processing solutions are the ones who aren't worried right now. They're the ones who are just, on the 14th of May, they're going to flip a switch and they're going to continue to take payments for their business, whereas everybody else might not be able to do that.
Yeah, good. That's good stuff. I love that. Building redundancy is having a backup to a backup, put another way. And just, to what Jason's saying is one of the things we talk about in Green Seed in our accelerator program is understanding what we call your cash levers. And so if you're out there listening and you're CBD e-commerce or you're thinking about it and you're thinking, yeah, but those rates are going to kill me and it's 2% more there and 3% more there, I can save. Something to think about as an entrepreneur is not only some of the things Jason said is building redundancy, having your plan B, and removing points of failure, but understanding that understanding your cash levers in your business can mitigate that higher percentage rate, which often happens in the e-commerce. And what I mean is something like this as an example. And again, we go in depth in our accelerator program, but we talk about maybe getting more favorable terms from your supplier. Instead of getting, instead of paying net 15, maybe asking them for net 30. So you save cash there. Or maybe if you can order more bulk. In other words, understanding where you can control your cash ins and outs because the fact is sometimes the merchant side it's difficult to control. And I think that's really what we're illustrating here, is that whether you're a startup or even in the industry, as evidenced by Elevon, it's turbulent. There's no guarantees right now. So that being said, is what's a startup to do? Like, inherently being an entrepreneur and being a startup entrepreneur and then being a startup entrepreneur in the CBD hemp e-commerce, it's risky. It's risky in any industry, but so what is a startup, somebody with the idea they want to take us, go to the races with this, what do they do?
That's a great question. So obviously, in terms of payment processing, find a solution, and obviously there's a handful of existing solutions out there. So I'd say look into obtaining one that you feel comfortable with, and that's a decision that obviously each entrepreneur has to make for themselves. But I'd say, ask the right questions and try to make sure that you're not signing up for, a solution that someone's just quick to sell. Make sure that you kind of run them through the ringer, if you will, and ask every single question you could possibly think of in terms of vetting who is offering you a service to take payments. And, online is a great tool. And I know that you and in your Facebook group, Rick, everybody's always sharing knowledge. So look to your peers, and see what they would recommend and see where they've had success or where they've, had a bad experience, and try to just navigate safely through this volatile moment. And, it's going to be hard for you to predict industry trends. One solution could seem ironclad, and then the next day it's gone. And that's kind of just the natural ebb and flow of high risk and ultra high risk industries, is that there's banks out there that are willing to kind of take a risk on the vertical and support it. But, at any moment they could, just like Elevon did, say, hey, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. It's too risky for us to pursue any further. So I'm not sure if I'm hitting the question on the head there, Rick, or not, but I guess that's where my mind goes when you
you
ask that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That actually leads me to some follow-up. So because you mentioned, ask the question. So let's just say that somebody, or here, just for our listeners, what are the top 3 questions that they should be asking a potential merchant processor who is either courting them or they are looking to do business with? In your mind, what are the top 3 questions we should be asking?
Well, they should be able to disclose openly the bank that's funding the transactions, and that's important. Just because, if they're withholding that information, your payments could be settled in any number of ways. So I'd say if they're kind of being secretive about who the bank is that's allowing these credit card transactions to be funded, if they're not going to openly disclose that, or be willing to at least find out if they don't already know, that's a red flag. I'd say try to find out what merchant category code they're going to be using to file your business, and basically that's maybe a little bit deeper than we really need to go, but every merchant account, there's merchant category codes that kind of classify what type of industry it is. And some solutions will take an application and underwrite it and say it's sporting goods, or something that's the furthest thing from what the actual product is. So I'd make sure that if you are approved somewhere, then find out what they're using for a merchant category code. I think anything in the health and wellness kind of category of codes is sufficient. Obviously, there's no CBD merchant category code, so that wouldn't be exactly specific there. But I'd say ask that, and then just find out if it's domestic or offshore. And then I could probably think of a billion other things to ask. But if I had to go top 3, that's probably what I'd want to find out: is the bank, what the merchant category code is, and if it's a domestic or an offshore solution.
Interesting. So I've heard 2 of those, but the one you said, it's the merchant category code. So is it then that some people will earn the business by classifying them in a less risky code? Is that kind of what you're saying?
In a way, yeah.
I didn't know that.
So basic, yeah. So like every merchant account goes through a credit underwriting. And when it's approved, the transactions are funded by the sponsor bank. And that sponsor bank obviously cares about the transactions that they're funding. After all, we're talking about credit transactions. Credit isn't actual real money until you pay your credit card bill every single month. And then, everything you bought then gets their money. So upfront, every single credit card transaction, there's a bank out there funding it temporarily until the card issuing bank gets their monthly fees back. So, the merchant category code is kind of like how the bank can be sure that every business that they're funding transactions for is within their credit policy. So as long as there's no random outliers for verticals that they don't support, then all is well on the bank side until they do an audit. And then obviously once they do an audit, they'll likely suss out any miscoded merchant accounts. And so the merchant category code is huge in terms of just making sure that the solution is above board and compliant.
Gotcha. I'm learning as you're talking. I mean, we've been in the industry for a while now, and as I shared with you prior to our call, we were kind of just bantering back and forth that as we're recording, we received the keys to our first retail location about 3 days ago, like literally 3 days ago, and we have 10 more coming online. And just when we think that we're getting our hands around and being able to wrap our arms around the industry, CBD and hemp, it just seems like there's more changes, and we have a pretty dynamic team, if I will say myself. It's not just myself and Lisa, my wife. Our CEO and VPs. We're building something that we're proud of, but it's nutty because just when we feel like we've nailed it or we grasped it, things change. And it's neither here nor there about CBD or hemp. I think it's just, like I said, entrepreneurship in general. The ability to pivot is, I think, is going to be a critical thing. So I know Jason there. It's like we're doing an adult version of peekaboo.
I keep getting calls and the Zoom chat dies. So sorry.
No, it's all right.
Yeah.
No, it's all right. We gotta roll with it. It's fun. We did an episode. Yeah. I think it just went live on our YouTube, not YouTube, but on our Instagram. We did an outtake because we were recording downstairs and somebody walked into the room as we're live recording, and it threw us off. But it actually became a pretty funny outtake that we just put on. I think it's on our Instagram page like this week, but it's funny.
A blooper reel.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was like a blooper reel. So it's
losing battery.
That's
just so everybody knows too. I was supposed to do this. I think Rick, you mentioned it, from my laptop, but now I'm doing it from my cell phone, and my battery is very quickly dying. So we might have to do this in 2 parts, Rick.
That's all right. No, I just wanted to ask you. So a couple more things is I'm fascinated because I was just sharing that just when a lot of folks think we grasp it, there's more knowledge to learn. I just want to ask you point blank is if I can invite you for a second show, but in our private mastermind group, just for our accelerator program participants, would you be willing to pop into the group maybe sometime this week?
Yeah, I'd love to answer questions that anybody has at any time. Very open, very transparent, and things change quick. So it's important to stay on top, and I'll do my best to make sure that everybody has the information and resources they need to make the best decision for themselves that they possibly can.
Nice. No, I appreciate that. I have one final question, and then I know now that you've said yes, we're going to do a follow-on in our accelerator program group. But in your mind's eye, you've been in this segment of the industry a lot longer than I have, at least. And I've never been in the merchant part. But when will it end?
Hard to say. I think there needs to be some weigh-in from the FDA in terms of what a dose is and what qualifies as like a portion of CBD, quote unquote. I think there needs to be some sort of legislation from or ruling from the FDA, kind of just letting everybody know like what their stance is on these as supplements and food items and all the other various applications of CBD. I think we need to see something from the FDA. I think there needs to be some financial regulation in terms of providing a safeguard for the banks that want to take the risk and underwrite CBD products into their credit policy. So, I'd say once those 2 things are in place, we'll likely see a handful of merchant processors open up into the vertical and start underwriting and accepting businesses. And that's when I think we'll really see rates kind of plummet and a lot more competition. But until then, it's just a handful of banks that are willing to take the risk. And that's what's kind of, they're being very exclusive, and it's kind of driving everybody into all these different directions and looking for unique solutions. And so I guess to answer your question, when will it end? I don't know. I think the industry is too big for it to dry up and die and go away. But in terms of a solution for entrepreneurs and the small guy, the mom and pops who can't afford these expensive rates for ultra high risk merchant accounts, I think it's just hard to predict when a good, cost-effective, reliable solution will come around. Until then, just like I said earlier, do your homework, explore one of the handful of options that are out there, and use it as a temporary measure. And obviously we don't like temporary measures in terms of building a business, but in this very particular case, I think that's the best we can do right now.
Yeah, I think that's the golden ticket is if somebody had a crystal ball and knew when it would end. It's interesting time without a doubt. So where can people reach you if they're interested in learning more about Merchant X, connecting with you and getting a real, like the no shitter answer about merchant processing? Like, how can people reach you?
Just give me a call. Obviously I can't take every single call every second of the day, but I'd love to hear from anybody who's interested. Can you provide my number and like a link after this, or should I just say it?
Yeah,
here?
say it because we'll also have this on our audio, on our podcast, where people won't be able to miss it, but by all means.
Yeah. So telephone number, area code 207-939-3559. It's my personal cell, obviously. Call me during normal business hours, Eastern Standard Time. Email is also helpful too. I have a kind of like a templated response to any startup CBD requests. My email is jason@merchantx.com, and that's MERCHANTX.com.
Gotcha. And that's also, we'll also share the link on all of our channels, and when we post this, to merchantx.com. And I really appreciate that. I really dig that we didn't pre-plan this, but that you give out your personal cell phone. It's a lost art where people want to connect direct, in my opinion, of modern day entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So really appreciate
For
it.
sure. I mean, my philosophy is everybody deserves the same exact attention. If you're the biggest merchant in the world or the smallest, I think it's important that you talk to somebody and get a straight answer that, that's unbiased. And obviously, if anybody's afraid to give out their contact information, then, that's a red flag too.
Words of wisdom.
And also guys too, I want to let you know, I guarantee I'm going to watch this video later and think of a million things that I could have or should have said. So anybody who has questions on anything that was mentioned here previously, I would love to answer those. I'm not sure how to funnel those my way, but send me an email or give me a call and I can clarify questions or dig deeper into a certain topic.
Nice. Yeah. And for those of you who are either watching this on YouTube or one of our channels, by all means, you can leave a comment. And we regular at We To Know basis look at those comments, and if need be, we can get them to Jason. Or like he said, he gave you his number, jason@merchantx.com, and we'll also be providing links to merchantx.com as well. But any parting words?
Just stay positive, guys. It's a temporary slump, momentary face dive, if you will. The industry will rebound. Cost-effective, reliable solutions will emerge. It's just a matter of weathering the storm. So just try to stay positive in the face of all the kind of just BS that we're going through right now as an industry.
Nice. Perseverance, right?
Perseverance.
Nice. Love it. Jason, I really appreciate your time, especially because it's after hours there in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you hopping on and us getting together. It's good seeing you again.
Yeah, man, for sure. Let's hang out soon. Come up to Maine.
All right, brother, I will. All right, hang on for a second. We're going to turn off the video, but thanks, guys, for tuning in. Remember, if you're watching this, it's because you have a We To Know basis. Thank you, Jason at Merchant X. Appreciate your time.